What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons as well as their variants in Infinite Warfare. In today's episode, we're going to be covering one of the brand new guns, and this is the X-Eon, or I like to pronounce it the Xeon. Let's get into it. Alright guys, before we get into the stats, I just want to explain exactly how you get the Xeon. First off, if you are a Season Pass holder, you already have it. It's already unlocked by default for you. But if you don't have the Season Pass and you haven't unlocked this yet, all you have to do is play 15 matches where you get a minimum of 6 unique kills. And by unique kills, I mean they have to be kills with different weapons in the game. The easiest way to do this, if you're just trying to get it done as fast as possible, just play gun game. As long as you can get up to 6 kills in gun game, that will count as one of your 15 games towards unlocking this gun. Also, I should point out, if you happen to get one of the variants of this gun in a supply drop, you just get it luckily, that will automatically unlock the base weapon for you. So now that we have that covered, let's hop into the base stats of the Xeon. So we've got a damage profile of 30-23, which is identical to the NV4, and this means it's always going to be a 4 to 5 shot kill in core game modes. Our rate of fire is 705 rounds per minute if you're aiming down sight, but if you're not aiming down sight, you actually have a significantly slower fire rate of 497 rounds per minute. Keep in mind, these are hand-tested values at 60 FPS. These are not the hard-coded stats. Our time to kill values when we're aiming down sight is going to be 255 to 340 milliseconds, and when we're hip firing, it's a lot slower at 362 to 483 milliseconds. One thing I really wanted to point out, since the NV4 is kind of that standard as like a really good, really consistent gun, the Xeon has a very noticeably faster time to kill than the NV4 as long as you're aiming down sight. Speaking of aiming down sight, our aim down sight time is actually quite slow for assault rifles at 300 milliseconds. The standard aim down sight time for assault rifles is going to be 250 milliseconds, so this is one of the big downsides to this gun. Our sprint out time, on the other hand, is standard for assault rifles at 150 milliseconds. And our reload add time is going to be 1.72 seconds, which is right around standard for assault rifles. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, because there have been a lot of rumors floating around, I saw this on Reddit and I've seen it pop up in my comments section, a lot of people are saying that dexterity doesn't increase your reload speed with this gun, and that's simply not true. I did test it, dexterity is working as intended on this gun. Our movement speed is standard for assault rifles at 94%, magazine capacity also pretty standard at 30 rounds, and our total starting ammo, including the magazine that you spawn with in your gun, is going to be 90 rounds. Moving on to the range of the Xeon, as you can see here, it's got an excellent 4-shot kill potential, and then beyond that it'll be 5 shots out to infinity. It doesn't quite match up to the NV4's 4-shot kill potential, but it is pretty close. As you can see, when you pop a suppressor on there, that reduces it by 25%, and if you pop particle amp on there, it increases it by 20%, which makes it much more competitive with the NV4. Moving on to hipfire, the Xeon absolutely excels in this area. It is by far the best assault rifle for hipfire, and if it wasn't for that slow rate of fire while you were hipfiring, I would say I would just hipfire all the time. But as you guys could see at the beginning, that does reduce your time to kill very significantly if you only hipfire. Getting into headshots, it has a standard headshot multiplier of 1.1, which gives us a headshot damage profile of 33-25, and that essentially means within its 4-shot kill potential, headshots will do nothing for you in core game modes. And in its standard 5-shot kill range, if for some reason you're able to manage 4 consecutive shots to the head, you will be able to get a kill, but that's not usually really practical. As for Faraday Slug, this gives us a 1.35 times multiplier to the head, which takes our headshot damage profile up to a 40-31, and this is absolutely useful with this gun, because in its standard 4-shot kill range, if you hit 2 shots to the body and 1 shot to the head, it will be a 3-shot kill now. As for recoil, if you pay very close attention, usually your first several shots fire in a very tight grouping, and then it starts to lose control, and it kicks up quite strong after that. So with this gun, if you're able to land your first several shots on target, usually you won't even really notice recoil too much, unless you're trying to pick somebody off like way across the map. But if you do miss your initial shots on somebody and you keep firing, that recoil will get a little bit out of hand on you. Just having a look at my 10-round recoil plots, as you can see here, we have the base Xeon, which actually doesn't have too much recoil within its first 10 shots, and then we have the Xeon with a grip, which you can see kind of reduces your recoil a little bit, but really not a significant amount. Now, one last thing I wanted to point out with the base Xeon is it's got great idle sway properties. It's kind of like the NV4 in that when you first aim down sight, the idle sway doesn't kick in for a couple seconds at least. And then when it does, there really isn't that much idle sway to deal with. So now let's hop right into the variants of the X-Eon. At this point, all of the variants of this gun are locked in the Quartermaster collection, so you can't craft them with salvage. And first up, we have a common variant called the Easy. And the Easy is really straightforward. It just has focus, which reduces your idle sway by 50%. Moving on to the rare variant of the X-Eon, we have the MCP. This one gives you on point as well as creeper, and with on point, this speeds up your aim down sight time, so now we get a standard assault rifle aim down sight time with this weapon perk. Unfortunately, the cost of that is your hipfire spread is now going to be increased by about 25 to 30%, but with the X-Eon, it's really not that big of a deal because that's still an amazing hipfire spread that it has. As for creeper, this one increases your movement speed while you're crouched, and this increase to your movement speed looks to be right around 25%. As for the legendary variant, this one is called the Farseer, and this one gives you Hitman as well as Sharpshooter. Now Hitman we have seen in the past. With Hitman, if you kill the entire enemy team, it has to be a minimum of 3 players on the enemy team. If you kill each one of those players, doesn't have to be in the same life as well, you get a very large bonus to your payload meter. It will essentially earn your payload for you as long as you kill the entire enemy team. As for Sharpshooter, this one's pretty straightforward, just gives you a 5% increase to your range. Now finally, we have the epic variant called the Warsight. And with the Warsight, we get Threat Designator as well as Stability. And Threat Designator just makes it so your optic will now counter active camo, cold-blooded, and hardwired. So you can see with the normal reticle, when you have just the base version of this gun, it will highlight enemies that don't have cold-blooded or hardwired or active camo. With the sight on this epic version of the gun, it will still highlight people that have cold-blooded, hardwired, as well as active camo. In addition to this, we get Stability, which reduces our view kick by 3% and makes the gun just a little bit more accurate. So that's all the variants we have so far for this gun. As for which one is my favorite, well, obviously the epic is pretty cool in that you can counter all of those perks and active camo with the sight, but in reality, how often is that going to make the difference between life and death? Probably not super often in my mind. If somebody's using cold-blooded or hardwired, I'm generally going to be seeing them and shooting them just fine without them being highlighted. And with active camo, what are the chances that first off you're going to run into an active camo user, and second, you're going to be aiming down sight where he happens to be active camoed? Sure, it's going to happen every once in a while, but is it going to be helping you every single game? Most likely not. So because of this, if I had to pick any one of these variants, I would actually pick the rare variant, which is the MCP. And the simple reason for this is you get that on-point weapon perk, which takes your aim down sight time to standard assault rifle aim down sight time, and that essentially removes any downside to using this gun. As for my overall thoughts for this gun, I think this is an excellent gun. It's definitely competitive with the NV4. I would go so far as to say this is becoming one of the upper tier guns. Maybe not the best gun in the game by any means, but it's definitely up there, and I would say it fits into the meta very competitively. For attachments, I'm definitely running quick draw all the time on this. I mean, I always do on any assault rifle, but especially with this gun, I want to be running quick draw. And also, something I wanted to point out, one little tip with this gun is usually as you're aiming down sight, fire your gun as you're aiming down sight, because you don't really have that penalty of having like kind of bad hip fire. Your hip fire is going to be more or less on point almost all the time, so fire as you're aiming down sight. Sure, it'll be a little bit slower at first, but once you get fully aimed down sight, then your rate of fire will improve. Aside from quick draw though, it kind of depends on what I'm doing. If I want to be suppressed, obviously I'll pop a suppressor on there. Other times I like to pop particle lamp on there just to make it more competitive with the NV4. And the only other attachment I would usually think of running on this would be a fusion mag. So there we have it. That's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide. I'd love to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think of the X-Eon? Do you think it's overpowered? Do you think it's just fine how it is? Or do you think it's underpowered? I don't think we're going to see too many people saying it's underpowered. But what do you think of it overall? And what is your favorite variant? If you could choose any one of those variants, what is your favorite? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.